What's up, guys? Mason the Rock Henderson here, and this is Legion Season 1, Episode 8, Chapter 8, the season finale. So, I guess typical Noah Hawley style, this season ends on, I guess, less of the epic climactic thing that I think a lot of people were expecting, or at least I was expecting. Fargo had kind of a similar feel in the second season. I was expecting this all-out brawl and people dying left and right, but ultimately it ended without that. So I was kind of shocked when they decided to do that. Well, here, same thing, almost. I mean, there is one climactic moment in the show, but ultimately it ends without some resolutions. Not everything ends clean cut, here's your answer, this is what you're looking for. It kind of ends on a big cliffhanger. And ultimately, it feels like the main villain for this entire season is still out there. He was kind of beaten, but not really. He just the point of this season, I guess, was to get Farouk out of David. That goal was accomplished, but ultimately, Farouk's still out there. It's now possessed Oliver, which means it's got another. I think Oliver's a psychic, but it's got another host that it's feeding on, and Oliver doesn't seem the least bit bothered by it. Like, it's just like, yeah, come on in, and then it's just like whistling out to his car and drives away with it, and even asks Lenny, where should we go? She's like, somewhere hot, and then turns on the radio, and they just drive away, and that's pretty much it. So yeah, I was a little bit surprised by that, but ultimately I think it kind of fits with the theme of the show, and that is, like I said, this first season was not about stopping Farouk or defeating Farouk. We found out who he was last episode. The point of this season has been David. Helping David get through what he's going through. Dealing with this, dealing with finding out he has powers, dealing with Sid. All of the things about his life. That's been this first season. And ultimately, it wraps up all of that. He doesn't have Farouk in him anymore. He realizes his powers and what he's useful for and what his point in life is. And on top of that, he and Sid end on a note where they realize who they are together, and they realize that their relationship works. Now, of course, there is that post-credits scene to talk about, but we'll get to that when in due time. As far as this episode goes, though, I mean, there are a few things that didn't really, I don't know, like, it's hard for me to really talk about it in general because a lot of it, there's nothing I can critique, there's nothing really I could say, oh, well, this works and this doesn't, because honestly, a lot of it is just it's the typical Legion style. It's what I've come to expect. You see what Lenny is trying to do to get out of David. You see Sid realizing that now she's got a connection with Lenny, which honestly did work. Just because you kind of know as soon as she says, we're connected now, you kind of understand, they did share a connection at one point. There was that moment where she touched David and they switched bodies, and now, using her inside of David, Lenny / Farouk killed everybody inside that asylum. So that scene did work, but then after that, I mean, it is kind of a slow roll up into that climactic battle at the end, where we see, they're talking to Clark from Division 3 a lot, and then we see Farouk is trying to get through the little halo thing that David's got on his head, and then they put him in the device that's supposed to extract him, and then for a few minutes it looks like it may be working, and then they suddenly realize it's not working, and Farouk is trying to kill him, and Sid realizes what she has to do, and then she kisses him, they switch bodies, and ultimately that leads to the climactic battle, which probably took 2 or 3 minutes maybe. And so, it is a fairly simple episode as far as I'm concerned. Just I look at some of the other ones, and I look at everything that happened, I'm like, holy crap, I got so much to talk about. Here, it doesn't really feel like I have got a whole lot to talk about. It's not bad. It's just, it feels like a pretty simple episode to end on. Now, that could be good or bad. You don't want to leave this overly complicated episode to end on where everybody's asking a ton of questions like, well, what does this mean? And what does this mean? And what does this mean? Ultimately, that was the last episode. It was a ton of questions answered, a ton of questions that are now posed, and what's going to happen next. This kind of just plain and simple, not a whole lot to talk about. That's just how it is. And I think it fits perfectly with the show. I think that's exactly what I kind of expected when I went into this. I didn't expect some huge climactic thing. I just expected this. I expected them to kind of end on a note where we are leading into season 2 a bit, but everything with David is wrapped up. Now, that does ask the question, what is season 2 going to be about? Is it going to be about Farouk again and trying to actually stop him for good? Or is it going to be about whatever this mysterious orb thing that appeared and trapped David inside of it? Is that going to be involved? Is Division 3 going to be involved? Is it going to be another story about, mutants are evil and the humans are trying to stop them? I don't know. Based on how this ended, I don't know, because they didn't really leave any clues for us as far as that's concerned. They sort of ended this season where it needed to end, and that's all you need to know. Now, there are a couple things I do want to talk about, because there are a couple things I need to ask the question. One was the Melanie and Oliver stuff. I don't know, I didn't really connect to it as much. Maybe it's because Oliver's hardly been in the show, or maybe it's just because it feels strange that they're all of a sudden bringing them up when we've got all of this other stuff going on. You could argue that it is kind of part of the show that, she is trying to get her husband back, and now that she's got him back, it's like she's kind of focused on that as well, and maybe not fully focused on what's going on in front of her. I don't know, it just seems strange as far as you got everything else going on, and all of a sudden it will cut to Melanie trying to talk to Oliver and trying to remind him who she is. Or that one scene where David and Farouk are fighting in the hall, and all of a sudden it cuts to him, and he's doing something. I don't even know what exactly he's doing, because at that point, everything was pretty much, the experiment was pretty much done at that point. And it cuts to him still in the generator room, and he's, pulling the lever, and all of a sudden stops. He's like, Melanie. And then goes back to it and keeps doing it. I'm just like, what is this? I don't know, it seemed the most bizarre in a show like this that's saying something, but it did seem like the most bizarre element of this episode. It just didn't feel like it fit in with anything else. Now, the fact that he gets possessed at the end, maybe that's why they're showing us a bit more of them, so that we understand, I guess, where he's coming from and how this will affect Melanie. But I don't know, just their scenes didn't feel like they fit in with everything else going on. And then, of course, also need to talk about the fight, because it was pretty cool. I mean, just first of all, they did a lot of it in slow motion, which some people could say, oh, what a cliche, slow motion fighting, oh, that's so stupid. To be honest, it kind of worked because they did all of it in slow motion. They didn't stop doing it. They didn't all of a sudden say, oh, they're fighting, and all of a sudden, let's speed it up, and back to slow motion. It was like every moment of the fight was slow motion. And then they would flip over to Oliver doing something in the generator room. He'd be moving normal speed, and then they'd go back, and it's slow motion again. I don't know, it worked for the scene. I feel like it was their decision to say, let's just have it all in slow-mo. They did it. But yeah, it was very interesting to see Sid, of course, talking to Lenny earlier, realizing that she had to be the one to sort of help Lenny Farouk escape, or else Farouk was going to kill David. And so escapes into Sid, and then she touches Carrie, and so now Carrie's possessed. She kicks the other Carrie, and then Ptolemy's shooting at her, which, why would you shoot at her? Because, I don't know, just part of me thought that's very strange that you're trying to kill Carrie whenever she's just possessed by it. I don't think that's actually going to kill the demon. I don't think. Maybe that will be something where they realize whoever's possessed, if they kill that person, then Farouk is dead too. Maybe that's what they thought, but I don't know. I just found that weird that he decided to shoot at her. But of course she dodges all the bullets, knocks him out, and then I guess uses some of his psychic powers, because then she goes up, does a finger gun at Melanie and knocks her down. And then out comes Clark out of the interrogation room. She throws him down the hall, and then David comes down like a superhero. And I gotta say, watching David in this episode was a lot of fun. You're just seeing him not only be a lot more confident in himself, because we haven't really seen that most of this season. He's felt like he's schizophrenic. He's felt like he doesn't really know what he's doing. For most of this episode, it feels like he understands this is his destiny. These are his powers. He's going to use them. Just watching him at the beginning toss all the guys into this column of people, and then watch him like sitting there like a Jedi, like he's just floating in the air, a bunch of above a bunch of trees, and then watching him, talk to Lenny in his mind, that confidence that he has there, right before Lenny says, "Oh no, I'm more powerful than you," and starts choking him. Um, but to see he comes like out of the ceiling like a superhero, just like, "I am coming to wreck some shit." And then all of a sudden they both start charging at each other, and they've got all their energy powered up. It knocks them both back, but it knocks Farouk out of Carrie right into Oliver, and that's where that fight ends. But, all in all, like I said, that's pretty much the main point of this episode, is just that final fight scene, kind of wrapping everything up with David, and then setting up a little bit for season 2 as well. So, don't really know where season 2 is going, but let's take a look back at season 1, because honestly, I think for the first season of this show, I think they did a really, really good job of setting everything up. I mean, obviously, it has a certain style to it that will already make it a bit more unique than most of the other superhero shows out there. But I think the biggest thing about it is that it's not just a show about a superhero. It's not just a superhero show. And honestly, like, I've been trying to talk to my brother about it. He's not somebody who's into, like, superhero stuff. Like, he's not a Marvel or DC fan. He just doesn't really like superhero stuff. But I'm still trying to convince him to watch it, because it's more than just a superhero show. It's actually a very interesting and unique show, just in the way that they sort of organize everything. It's more focused on David himself and what he's going through, rather than his powers and, I've got to learn how to save the world and all of that stuff. That is a part of it as well, but they don't really make it feel like a superhero show. Like, you don't really see them doing the typical superhero cliches where they're having to stop the bad guy, or they're having to save the world. David's just trying to figure out what to do. Like, he is so confused about what's going on, about this thing that's inside of him, about his powers, and the possibility that he might be schizophrenic. That's what he's having to deal with, and that's what they keep the focus on. So I really think they did a good job overall throughout the entire season of just keeping the focus there. They did give us some interesting side characters. Patanomy was interesting at first and then kind of dropped out, but then Melanie sort of picking up, like, I guess, where he left off, and being the interesting side character with an interesting story. The Carries were involved throughout most of the season, and they were fairly interesting to watch. Oliver popped in about halfway through and started providing a bit more to the story. Division 3 even. I mean, they're kind of the bad guy, but not really at the same time. So it'll be interesting to see if the mutants will be able to work with the humans to stop a bigger ultimate threat. So, I don't know, I just really like how they set up everything and kept everything focused in one spot. And on top of that, I mean, it is a very, very unique show for many reasons. I mean, the style, the music, the cinematography, all of it was so unique. And I love whenever a show can do that and take some chances. Some of it may seem stupid to some people, but I mean, I'll remember a lot of those scenes for a long, long time. I mean, the one where it was completely silent for, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes. The one where it was just Oliver directing words in front of them while it's just the music playing, and then whenever it cuts back to what's going on inside of the memory palace, it's like in an old-timey film where they're saying stuff but no words are coming out, and then the words pop up on the screen. I mean, a lot of those scenes are very interesting, and they just stick out so much in my mind because of how unique they made them. And it was beyond just, oh, we can do something different, unique. No, they actually did something that made sense within the show, but also kind of provided a little bit of extra spice to it. If they had just done those scenes without those added things in, it would just felt like another scene in a show that, is just whatever. It's another X-Men show, I guess. But adding those elements in not only gives it a style, but also kind of sets it apart. Makes us remember those scenes, makes them a lot more memorable. So I really like everything they did with this season. Hopefully we get, a more involved second season where it's not just David anymore. Now it's actually got a good plot going forward as far as Farouk and Division 3 and all of that stuff, and the mutants. That's more of the comic book / superhero fan in me. And on top of that, I still have a lot of questions. Like, we still don't really know who Obviously, a lot of people have already said who David's dad is, but we still haven't gotten to see him. We haven't gotten to see what exactly Farouk is. Obviously we know he's a mutant, but we still don't really know where he came from or what his origin is. We still don't really know much about David's family before or after he got adopted. Obviously we saw Amy, but we don't really know their parents, and are they good people? The book that they read, The World's Angriest Boy, I mean, that seems like a very strange book to be reading him, and yet that's one of the books that they read him. So still don't really know much about them in general. And just there's so much more you can expand upon within this universe that I'm really curious to see what they're going to do with it. So I'm looking forward to season 2. I really enjoyed season 1. This final episode, not anything big and spectacular, but still very enjoyable. Typical, I guess, Noah Hawley production. So let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What did you like and dislike about this episode and this season? Let me know. We can talk about and discuss all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Legion reviews, and I'll see you at the next one. Peace out.